I don't know if this is an Eastern Coast thing. For Americans, of course. But in my little town, there's a twice the ice station. Basically, you can fill up water jugs in 5 gallons and get ice bags for cheaper than you can get it in the grocery store. I went out a few nights ago to get some water because who wants to be drinking tap water? My husband was home, and because I'm kind of heavily pregnant, he insisted that he go instead. I wish he would have. It was about 1 a.m., dark for miles and in the middle of nowhere. As I get out of my car, I open the back seat to get the gallon jugs and close the door. As soon as I do, a dark blue truck turned van pulls up perpendicular behind mine, presumably so I couldn't get out if I decided to get back in my car. Alarm bells start going off, and the bells start screaming at me when the side door opens and 2 quite large men step out. It's about a 20-foot distance between them and me, so I do the first thing I think of. I pull out my phone. I answer a phone call from my husband and answered with a, "Hey honey, yeah, I'm almost home." As soon as they see me answer, one of the guys say, "Shit." And they both get back in the car and peel out of the lot, tires squealing and all. I throw my unfilled jugs back into my car and lock all the doors 1,000,000 times or more before I broke down and called my husband for real this time. He told me to write down the make and model of the car, color, etc., and we'd go to the police station in the morning. About 2 days later, there was breaking news of a pregnant woman that went missing. She was abducted, as her father had sworn up and down she wouldn't just up and leave. I knew it was the men in the blue van. I've told the police all I know. I don't know if they targeted me because I was a woman all alone in the middle of nowhere, but deep down, I know they targeted me because I was pregnant, and I don't want to think about what would have happened to me or my baby. So, men in the blue car, fuck you, and let's never meet again. Edit. I've been busy for a couple of days and haven't had time to check developments. The woman was found safe and alive, and it was perhaps completely unrelated to my encounter. Still horrifying, though. Edit 2. Apparently, the woman was not engaged, and there were discrepancies in witness stories that claimed she was engaged. She was not. In my shock, I never bothered to fact check. Edit 3. Not how I thought I'd receive my first gold, but thank you, kind stranger. A week or so ago, I went for my very first job interview. It was just a 10-minute ride away, and I happened to get a seat alone because it was like 10 a.m., meaning rush hours were well over. So there I was, 18 and all dressed for the occasion, and looking kinda like Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's how I dressed. I was sitting there minding my own business, listening to music, when I made eye contact with him. Mid-30s, dark, tightly curled hair, somewhat of a small beard and Creepo style mustache, sloppy dress and backpack. I didn't take any notice until I was getting off, and he got off too, saying hello to me. I said hi back, not taking much notice, and thanked the bus driver. Straight away, this dude was on me. He began to ask my name and what my number was. I felt uneasy and creeped out, so I told him I wasn't allowed to tell random strangers that because my parents are protective. Total lie. They're actually chill when it comes to these things. He then began this pity spiel about how he came from somewhere in India and had no friends or family in Ireland, and how he was so lonely. Then he asked for my address, and I noped again. And he was saying how he'd meet my parents and they could get to like him. I instantly lied and said my interview was soon, when really it actually wasn't for another 50 minutes, but fuck it. Made a good impression by being early. I came out afterwards feeling good, and this dude was fucking waiting outside for me. He began to stroll around with me and followed me into the pharmacy because I needed to buy something. He then began telling me how he worked as a chef in the resort in the village, and he would bring me for some tea. I lied and said I had no money, to which he said he'd pay for me because the bus wouldn't be there for an hour, and we could walk down when we saw the bus arrive. I declined and said I wanted to have a walk around by myself, because my friends living nearby would be meeting me. Lies. Reason? You can't see the bus stop from the resort. He seemed intimidated by the pack thing and kinda scurried off. Here's why I lied. Number 1, he seemed way too upfront. Number 2, he was smiling and laughing when he told the pity story, meaning he wasn't really sad about it. 3, I know a girl who's a pastry chef and the daughter of a baker. I've done home economics classes. Facial hair isn't fucking allowed in hotel/resort kitchen areas. Number 4, that scenario is how most Law and Orders, CSIs, Criminal Minds, etc. start. So cut to a while later. I'm hanging at the bus stop, and the bus arrives. Guess who doesn't? Dude. So random dude who followed me around the village. I hope we never meet again. And I pray to Jesus that no unfortunate person has fallen for your little trick. There was an annual event that takes place in Sana'a University's library. It's in Yemen. Basically, a group of publishing houses from around the world would gather in the library and sell their books. My mom really loves books, and she reads like 3 or 4 books every month, sometimes even more. She was already graduated from the university, but her love for books kept her going to that event every year. This story took place in 1997, 1 year after my birth. My mom was pregnant with my sister, and she was in her 9th month, so she was really huge. She went to the event in its final days, so there wasn't a lot of people other than the booksellers. My mom had already bought a couple of books and was looking for a certain book, and she kept asking around for it. She noticed that there was a guy following her, but he kept a distance, so she didn't give him much attention. She finally arrived to one of the publishing houses and asked the guy who was working there for the book she'd been looking for, and he told her that the book is not allowed to be sold in this country, so she won't be able to find it anywhere. At that moment, the guy that was following my mom showed up all of a sudden and said to my mom, "I have that book you're looking for." My mom was surprised and didn't know what to say to the guy. He continued talking and said, "I saw the books you bought, and I really like your taste." My mom just smiled and thanked him and then said, "I can give you the book you're looking for." She said that's okay, and the book it's not really that important. But he insisted and said, "I'm a professor in this university, and my name is Muhammad Adam. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. I will leave the book with my assistant. Next Sunday, come to my office and I will let my assistant give it to you." He kept telling her not to worry and not to be scared and nothing will happen to her. He was nice and creepy at the same time, and she didn't think much of it. So she just said okay and went back home. She then asked my father to take her to the university on Sunday so she can take a look at the book. few days went by, and on Sunday morning, my mom's water broke. So my father rushed her to the hospital, and she gave birth to my sister and just forgot about the whole thing. After a few weeks, we traveled to another country. About 3 years later, my mom heard in the news that a serial killer named Mohammed Adam was arrested in the university. Her mind exploded when they showed a picture of the man and told my father that this was the same man who offered to give her the book a few years ago. They both were really glad that my sister's timing couldn't be more perfect. That man murdered more than 10 female students in horrible and disturbing ways. That's so hard to imagine. The man was trialed and sentenced to death. Here's a link for this man's story. I was returning home from my friend's place at about 8 p.m. I had left my phone with my mom and had absolutely no money with me. My friend found me a cab and gave me some money for the fare. The cab driver told me that he had to recharge his phone in the middle of the ride, and I saw him talking on the phone in a shop nearby. I didn't think much of it. A few minutes later, when he was driving, I noticed that we were in this dark and isolated part of the city where there were trash bags everywhere. We were on the street for a long time, and he suddenly stopped in the middle and told me he had to make a call. He was talking to someone while making sure I didn't hear it, and I started to get alarmed. When he came back in the cab, I pretended that my wallet was my phone, and in the local language started pretending to tell my mom the number of the cab and the description of the cab driver. That seemed to change his behavior, and he was cooperative with me and drove me where I wanted to go. My parents were very angry at me when I got back home when I told them this. It still gives me the creeps. A few weeks ago, my friend and I, both 14 and females, were having a sleepover at my house. There's a Walgreens down the road from my house, and it's about a 15-minute walk there and back. We were bored, so we decided to walk there and get some candy. However, we were both stupid and went at 10 p.m. We knew it wasn't smart to go out at night, especially being 14 and rather small for our age, but my neighborhood has little to no crime rate. The last crime in my neighborhood, years ago, was committed by this drunk dude who stole someone's cat. Overall, it's a very nice and cozy neighborhood, so we just thought everything would be perfectly fine. My parents didn't care either, considering how safe our neighborhood was and everyone knew each other. So my friend and I were just walking down the street and talking. We were about halfway there when we heard a twig snap about 30 feet behind us. We turned around and there was this dude. I wasn't freaked out because some other people were walking, so this was normal. The dude smiled at us and sprinted up towards us, which freaked me out. He asked us what our names were, our age, and where we lived. We only told him our age. The other answers were made up. He then asked us if we would like to go to a party with him. He was very tall and looked to be in his older 40s, early 50s, which is very creepy, considering you're asking girls that look too young to be 14 at 10 p.m. to go to a party. My little sister is in 5th grade, and I went to her orientation, and the teacher thought that I was one of her students. I asked politely if he could leave us alone and that we weren't interested in going. He begged some more, but eventually gave up after being ignored for a while. We were almost at Walgreens when I turned around just to see if he was actually gone, but nope. There he was again, about 40 feet behind us, following us. My friend did that "what the heck" face towards him, and he started running so fast towards us, and we were running too. We made it inside Walgreens, and luckily, he didn't follow us in. We got our candy. We were about to walk out when I noticed he was sitting on a bench waiting for us. I was considering calling my dad for a ride back, but his car stopped working and my mom was at her friend's house. We were going to ask the only lady working that night for help, but she has problems with hearing and is even smaller than we are, so we didn't want to risk her safety. My friend said she realized she had pepper spray, but just a little bottle, and it was empty. I was kind of mad that she didn't know before because it could have been helpful earlier on, possibly to scare the guy, but oh well. We went outside and the man started following us again. This time, he grabbed my arm and I stomped on his foot really hard and screamed. My friend showed him that we had pepper spray and said if he kept following us, we would call the cops. He cursed us out and walked the other way. I hope I don't see him again. Road rage psycho trying to take her revenge on me. The woman almost hit my car because she sped on a yellow light, drove up to me and flipped me, then aggressively overtook me and started to slam her brakes every few meters on the road with almost no traffic. For fuck's sakes, she blocked me every time I tried to overtake her on a 2-lane road. I got pissed and drove off to a gas station parking. Since I was already there, decided to tank my car. As I'm finishing, I see her fucking car pulling up next to me, and there's what probably well over 300-pound lady getting out and going batshit crazy, yelling and such. At this point, I'm starting to get weirded out because of the fact that she followed me here is concerning. And then my breaking point. She takes her keys and goes to scratch my car. No fat bitch is damaging my car. After pulling her away and taking the keys, the situation escalated quickly. She tried to hit me. At that point, the station's employees noticed what was happening and pulled her away. The cops were called and she got attempted assault charges. To this day, I wonder what kind of person thinks that they are entitled to revenge for almost hitting someone. Lady who tried to beat me up for almost hitting my car? I hope I never see you again. I originally posted this on Let's Not Meet, and it got lots of attention, but was taken down, so I'm cross-posting it here. So this happened to me a few years ago when I was a freshman in college. I'm now a junior, and it's still insane to think about. At this point in my 20 female young adult life, I've been around the block and I've definitely had lots of freaky encounters with men since entering college. But I've always considered this one to be one of the worst. For a little background, I go to school in the Boston area, and there's a local burger chain that has a few locations sprinkled around the city. I believe they have a partnership with Fenway, so it's a fairly popular business, and I loved going there with my friends in the first few months I was at college. One Saturday night in December, I went there with a few friends after we'd smoked a little weed and wanted to get something to eat. We walked in and it was pretty crowded, so we all got in line and waited to order. Something I've discovered about myself since being in college and dealing with lots of creepy guys is that I have a really strong sense of intuition, and I can honestly tell when someone's going to be weird with me. We'd eventually advance towards the front of the line, and there was only one register open. One of the men working in the kitchen, it's an open kitchen concept, saw me and came over to open another register before calling me over. I was waiting in line behind my friend, who was just one person away from being at the register, so I thought it was odd that he hasn't asked her to come over since she was next in line. Plus, the line had died down at that point and a second register wasn't really needed, especially since they only had one when the line was longer. So, I already knew that something was up, but I figured it was going to be a typical being hit on experience, so I tried not to worry. I got to the register and he started chatting me up, asking how my night was, etc. I tried to be polite, but really focused more on ordering my hot dog, LMFAO. So I gave him my order and paid with my debit card. As is customary, 2 receipts were printed out, one of which being for the business to keep. This is important. I took my own receipt and went to sit down with my friends until my order was called. I honestly don't remember if he took any orders after mine, but regardless, while I was waiting, I noticed he kept stealing looks at me, and I tried to brush it off. Another employee was bringing out trays and calling orders, so some of my friends had just got their food. Eventually, my order was finished, and the man from the register realized it was mine and brought it over to the counter himself to give it to me personally. I didn't even look him in the face when I took it because I had such a weird feeling about the whole thing that just kept getting worse. While we sat there eating, he kept staring at me and I mentioned it to my friends, but they tried to reassure me and told me not to worry because they were there. When we'd mostly finished, he came over and offered to throw away our trash, specifically mine at first, to which we declined. It was still fucking packed, so it wasn't really normal that this guy was trying so hard to cater to one group and no one else, especially when he was supposed to be in the kitchen. We left and things seemed fine, but I kept having this feeling that something bad was still going to happen and that this situation hadn't really ended. The next day, I was busy doing some studio work on a short film. I'm an animation major, so I was at the arts building for most of the morning. Once I came home, I took a nap because I'd been animating basically all day, and I woke up around 5 p.m. I checked my phone to see what time it was and saw that I'd gotten a request on Facebook Messenger. I didn't recognize the name, but I can honestly say that in the back of my mind, I had a horrible feeling that this was the cashier from the night before. And I was right. I opened Messenger, looked at his Facebook profile picture, and immediately felt one of the most sickening, shocked feelings I've ever felt. I looked through his photos, still absolutely shocked, and basically had an anxiety attack. He'd sent me a friend request and multiple messages that said exactly this. "Oh my god, no way, I can't believe this is you. I believe so, but LOL, I was scrolling through Facebooks and I believe I seen you yesterday, LOL." He then tried to add me on Messenger. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I'm just like in shock you popped up, LMAO. First of all, this guy is full of shit. There is legitimately no way that he wasn't intentionally searching for my profile for numerous reasons. First, the Facebook algorithm really only shows you people that you might know through mutual friends. I was 18 at the time, and all of my recommended friends had either gone to school with me or had mutual friends. There were literal pictures of me at my high school graduation from that year. This guy was almost 30 years old, clearly knew how young I was, had no mutual friends, and lived nowhere near me. Second, my profile picture at the time was my dog, so he wouldn't have known it was me unless he'd purposefully been looking. None of that just scrolling through bullshit. And lastly, I'm one of the only 2 people on Facebook with my name and my last name is fucking hard to spell. There's seriously no way you'd find me without actually looking. So of course, I was absolutely terrified and was trying to figure out how he could have possibly tracked me down. But then I remembered the second receipt, how I'd used my debit card and how my name was printed on that paper. That was the only way he could have figured it out, so I assume he kept that receipt for himself or wrote my name down for later. And then I'd remembered that I'd worn my collegiate sweatshirt to the restaurant that night, and how my college was also listed on my profile. It was literally just a few minutes down the road from where he worked. Panicking, I told my friends, who were also incredibly shocked, and we tried to figure out what to do. We went and ate at the dining hall, discussing what had happened, and eventually I ended up back in my dorm. Upon getting to my room, I realized he'd tried to video chat with me while I was at the dinner, following it up with, "Didn't mean to do that." But I'm sure he would have meant it if I'd answered. We ended up calling the restaurant and get stuck listening to a directory, so my friend left a message explaining the situation. I was too freaked out, and we hoped for an eventual response. They literally never even got back to us. Meanwhile, I called my other friend who commutes from home and told her about what had happened. She told her mom, who immediately called the restaurant and actually got a person on the other line. She explained the situation, and they seriously didn't even do anything. All she got was a half-hearted, "Yeah, we'll talk to him," but said they wouldn't fire him and nothing more. There was really no feeling of resolution here. During this whole thing, he sent me another message around 10:30, clearly desperate to pry a response out of me. "I'm just so curious if it's you." Needless to say, I was extremely freaked out by this whole thing and of course never responded. Took screenshots of everything and went to campus security the next day to give them a description of this guy just in case. I ended up not finishing my film and showing up late to the class because I was literally too petrified to leave the house. Luckily, my teacher was understanding. I do know that somebody clearly did talk to him because he blocked me on Facebook a few days later, but I still felt uneasy. Time went on and I eventually felt better about the whole thing, but my parents and I have never gone back to that restaurant. It was kind of a bummer because I really liked it there, but I was advised by campus security to stay away. Plus, I wasn't really keen on potentially running into him again anyway. I've since made my profile more private, and a lot of my information is now hidden from public view. I was so afraid to use my debit card for a while, which sucked, but it's not an issue anymore. So, creepy fucking cashier who used my debit card to stalk me. Let's never meet.